Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and welcome to Headlines. Headlines for the week of September 9th. Today is September 12th. But before I get into headlines, a couple of housekeeping items. I want to talk about some of the people that have been on this podcast before. The first one is United Cerebral Palsy of Central Phoenix. They are going to have a carnival fundraiser at their facility on September 17th, which is next Tuesday. And here's what it says. Get ready for a day of delicious food available for purchase from Rosie's Kitchen, Frios Gourmet Pops, Whiffy's Hot Dogs. I got to have one of those. It's in Phoenix, and I will be there because I got to have one of Whiffy's Hot Dogs. K-Star Barbecue, along with exciting games like rodeo golf and cornhole, plus fun activities. Can't wait for that. If you're in the Phoenix area, please go and support United Cerebral Palsy of Central Phoenix. You can get their address, well, let me give you their address. 1802 West Parkside Lane in Phoenix, 85027. So check them out. They're going to have that fundraiser from 10 to 2 next week. I will be there, and I can't wait to see Gail and all the people, all the great people over at United Cerebral Palsy of Phoenix. Number 2, I want to thank Adobe Population Health. I had the honor of speaking at their event for their managers yesterday on September 11th, and it was a great event. You talk about a great people and a great organization. Adobe Population Health is just that. I want to thank Jamie Ambrose for allowing me to come out and talk to her people. It was a great thing. I talk about having one hand and the challenges and opportunities and luck and blessings that have been in my life, and I enjoy doing that. If you're interested in hiring me as a speaker for your event, please go to MikeBolland.com. Or here's my email address, Mike@MikeBolland.com. Yeah, big surprise there, Mike@MikeBolland.com. A lot of fun. And here's another chance to see me, though, for free. I'm going to make like a comedy comeback here. I haven't done comedy a little bit because I've been concentrating more on the speaking, although maybe my life is a bunch of comedic errors, you can say. But anyway, I'm going to be performing at Jared's Coffee and Tea in Mesa on September 20th, which is a week from Friday when this comes out, at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Kristen Levanway, for allowing me to be on your show. I'm really looking forward to that. And then tomorrow, I'm going to give my time to an organization that I actually talked about on this podcast probably about 2 months ago, and that's Camp No Limits. I can't wait to go out there and volunteer my time. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I always say, hey, if there's anybody in the Phoenix area that can get some help, need some help, lend a hand, however you want to say it, I'm going to go out and do it. So I talked about Camp No Limits, like I said, about 2 months ago on the headlines portion of this podcast. And lo and behold, they're coming to Phoenix. So I did the application process, and I'm going to go out there and volunteer my time. And I can't wait to meet the great people at Camp No Limits. I'm really excited about this. But let's get into the headlines. Headline number 1, and this is kind of interesting. This is more of a report, and this comes courtesy of Verified Market Reports. And they put together a very comprehensive report on the prosthetic aftermarket and all of the things within that. And they have it bulleted. I'll have this in the descriptions if you want to go check out what I'm reading right here. They even have a way you can download this white paper. But I'm going to just give you some of the bullet points that are included in this frequently asked questions of this website. Kind of give you a taste of what this report is all about. So number 1, but their number 1 topic, what is the current size of the artificial limbs market? And the answer is the global artificial limbs market was valued at $1.8 billion in 2020 and is projected to reach $2.7 billion in 2027. So that would make me think, and probably you think, what are some of the key factors? And this is the exact number 2 bullet point. What are some of the key factors driving the growth in the artificial limbs market? Well, there's an increasing number of amputations due to accidents, injuries, and chronic diseases, as well as the advancement in prosthetic technology. That's what's driving the growth in the aftermarket prosthetic, in the artificial limbs market. Which region has the largest market share for the artificial limbs market? North America is currently the largest market for artificial limbs, followed by Europe and Asia Pacific. What are the major challenges? This is an interesting one. What are the major challenges faced by the artificial limbs market? The high cost of prosthetic limbs, which is not going to be a surprise to anyone listening to this podcast, but that is cited. The high cost of prosthetic limbs, the lack of reimbursement policies, and the limited access to prosthetic technology in developing countries are some of the major challenges faced by the artificial limbs market. What are the types of artificial limbs available in the market? And again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know the answers to this. But hey, let's face it, I have a podcast and I talk to upper and lower. I talk to everyone that I possibly can. Maybe if you're a lower, you don't know a lot about the upper and vice versa. But the answer is the market offers upper extremity prosthetics, lower extremity prosthetics, and liners and sockets as the main types of artificial limbs. Again, probably not a surprise to anyone listening to this podcast, but still, it's in the report and it's interesting. This is be the last bullet point on headline number 1. What are the current trends in the artificial limbs market? And here's the answer. The use of 3D printing technology for customized prosthetics. And that's cool. The customized prosthetics, that's something that when I was wearing prosthetics when I was a kid, they didn't have that. And I like the fact that you can get your prosthetics customized. I think that's cool. I've interviewed people who have the New York Yankees and the American flag on their prosthetics. I mean, I guess the only thing that limits you is your imagination. So I think that's kind of cool. Also, the development of bionic limbs with advanced functionalities and the adoption of myoelectric prosthetics. Those are some of the current trends in the artificial limbs market. Again, I got to let me get the name. Thank you, Verified Market Reports, for putting this information together. Those are just some of the key findings that I went over. I think this website right here has 25 different bullet points. Plus, then you can download the white paper, which has a lot more information. So if you'd like more on this, if you're interested in this information, I will have this linked on the We're Not Stumped podcast, plus all the major platforms where you can listen to this, whether it be Apple, all the descriptions, YouTube, all of that. So if you're interested, go check it out. And then check this out. This is headline number 2, and I like this one. Volunteers planning to build a ramp for Flint Township double amputee. And this comes courtesy of Angie Hendershot from ABC 12 in Michigan. So it starts, a double amputee in Flint Township is getting some much needed help thanks to the kindness of strangers. Awesome. Earlier this week, ABC 12 introduced a man named David who lost both of his legs in a motorcycle accident. He struggles to get in and out of his house without a wheelchair ramp. He is sometimes forced to crawl up a piece of plywood to get to his front porch and drag his powered scooter behind him. Lieutenant Andrew Snyder of the Genesee County Sheriff's Office began efforts to help after seeing his story, David's story, on ABC 12's website, which I will link to so you can read this and you can read both stories or watch both stories. After watching it, I sat there and I was thinking, gosh, it kind of bothers me that someone like David would need help and there was no one to help him, Schneider said. He contacted his boss and friend, who is the county sheriff, and that's Chris Swanson, to see what could be done. Plans are now in the works for volunteers with United Way UAW wheelchair ramp program to build a new ramp for David. Volunteers expect the ramp to be installed later this week. It's a great story. Thank you to Angie Hendershot for reporting that for both stories. The first story, which enabled Mr. Snyder to understand that there was a need. Thank you, Mr. Snyder, for taking your time, getting your friends together to help David out. Great story. If I was there, I would lend a hand, just the one, of course, but I would lend a hand and I'd hit some nails. I'd drive in, some lag bolts. I would do whatever I could to help. I'm sure you got it handled, but thank you so much for your time. And listen, we all have the opportunity to help. No matter what we can do, we can all help. So if you see a story like that in your local newspaper, hey, get a hold of the person who wrote the story, like Angie Hendershot. She'll give you the contact information, I'm sure, or they will give you the contact information, I'm sure, and then go out and help. I think that's just a great story. So thank you to everyone that's involved in that story. And again, thank you, Angie, for reporting initially the first story and certainly the second story is very interesting. Headline number 3. Today's going by fast. It's going by way too fast. But we're already on headline number 3. We're having fun. 4 participants at Winter Park climbing event beat the world record for below-knee amputees. And this comes from Meg Sawyers Van Howen at skyhighnews.com. And the article goes like this. On September 7th, more than 100 people gathered for the Range of Motion Project's first North American signature hike. Thanks to a huge turnout for the event at Winter Park Resort, the nonprofit known as ROMP, I'm sure a lot of you know about ROMP. It's a great organization. I'll link to it in the description. They raised over $21,000. The organization's mission is to raise funds for those who have lost a limb so they can receive high-quality prosthetics. Awesome. ROMP is based in Colorado, but helps support amputees around the world, especially in developing countries where prosthetic care can be very limited. Yeah, absolutely. At Winter Park Resort, participants enjoyed sunny weather as they climbed the Ute Trail. The hike is 2.2 miles and was open to everyone, even if they just wanted to do one lap. But 4 people had a larger goal in mind, beating the Guinness World Record. Julie Tollison, Jason Malver, Steve Crawford, and Tanner Jones aim to take the greatest vertical distance in a day for below-knee amputees, which is 5,000 feet in elevation. Excellent. The previous record was set in 2021 when John Hilton climbed 4,412 feet in one day. The four beat this record at the resort as they climbed up Ute Trail several times in 6 hours. While celebrating this personal achievement, they also raised awareness for amputees around the world that ROMP helps. Thank you, ROMP. Thank you to the 4 people that summited this to Ute Trail. Great story. Now check this out. After the hike, the community members enjoyed a celebration at Vicious Cycle Brewing in Fraser. Doesn't Vicious Cycle Brewing sound quenching? I got to check that out. If I'm ever in Fraser, I want to check out Vicious Cycle Brewing. I bet you they have some great stuff there. Although the climb is over, people can still donate. You can still donate. You can still make an impact with ROMP. You can still donate to the Winter Park Resort Fundraising Club by visiting the ROMP Global website. I'll link to it again in the description, but it's rompglobal.org, ROMP global.org. And the fundraising goal is set at $25,000, and the organization has almost reached it. So great job by the people at ROMP, and certainly everybody that climbed the summit. What a great story. Please, if you have the means and the opportunity, go support ROMP. Go support what these people were doing. A great story. Hey, if ROMP wants to come on the podcast, I sound like a broken record. I think I said the same thing last week. I always sound like a broken record. Come on the podcast. Come on, let's talk. I like talking to people. I like learning more about the mission of people, and an organization like ROMP is doing so many great things. And the only thing I could do with a podcast like this is try to create awareness for the people themselves, whether it be an individual or organizations, or like the Resilience. What a great band made up of military veterans. The only thing I can do with this podcast is hope to spread the word and create awareness around some of the great things that are happening in the limb loss community. So please come on the podcast if you'd like. We can talk about your organization. Just like, hey, Camp Low Limits, I'm going to be there tomorrow. I can't wait. I'm not going to be there to report, but if somebody, they know that I do a podcast. So if we have a little discussion and maybe I can get part of their organization on this podcast, I can certainly report out on it as far as like my volunteer experience, which I'm sure is going to be great. I can't wait to do it. We're going to have a great time. Well, in closing, I just want to say, remember, if you want to help support this podcast, if you want to help support the We're Not Stumped podcast, I have this great sticker, $5 shipped to you. I'm not stumped, because you know what? Like I said, I just threw it. We're not stumped. We may have stumped. It doesn't mean we are stumped. We are powerful people within the limb loss community. All the dollars and cents. And by the way, I sold 7 last week. So continue to get the sales going, because I just reinvested into this podcast. Go to We're Not Stumped. But remember the URL, you can't have apostrophes in the URL. So it's like WERE, notstumped.com. Go to that website and buy one of those stickers. Show off yourself that I'm not stumped. I may have a stump. I may be part of the limb loss community, but I'm not stumped. Go there, buy it. I'm going to reinvest into this podcast and get more of these types of stories out, like Camp No Limits, like Artificial Limbs Market, like I just talked about, the volunteers planning to build a ramp, and romp.org, global romp. What was the, I'm going to get that website before I forget. Let me go back. Gosh, if I'd have I would be missing a hand if I didn't forget it, right? Okay, well, I guess I did forget. Romp Global, ROMP global.org. Go there, support them. But above everything else, everyone, everything else, have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.